Emily.
All right. Let's get things kicked off. If I can have your attention, we're gonna get things started. I need to turn it up some more. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming. We're gonna get started. We have a great topic, so I want to make sure that we get into the weeds of everything and get everything covered. So today, of course, we're going to talk about your AI workspace and how you can multiply your output with that. We have an amazing speaker for that. Before we get into that, just a couple of different things that I want to go over. First, how many of y'all are either a member, an advisor, or an alum of one of our programs? All right. Yes. I'm very happy you all are here. How many of y'all are not a member or advisor? Or there should be a lot more hands based on the question, but that's okay. So for anybody that's new to the EC, also raise your hand. If this is your first time here, a couple hands. All right. So a little bit about what we do here at the EC is we want to be the center hub for Nashville to increase the likelihood of success for entrepreneurs. And the way that we do that is by providing support resources through either membership or accelerator programs. A little bit about membership. So my name is Trevor Coy. I'm the community manager. That is something that I help manage. But the resources that come with that are access to over 170 plus advisors. So there's some advisors in this room. Once again, advisors, raise your hand. There should be a lot more hands. I see some advisors. Maybe not paying attention, but that's okay. But yes, very thankful for them. So access those are over 170 plus advisors, entrepreneur support resources such as startup curriculum, startup discounts, meeting room space, co-working space, you name it, we have those resources for you entrepreneurs. We also have accelerator programs. So you'll see over here these three banners. So we have those for the industry agnostic and then also based on your business stage. So we have takeoff for those ready to launch, in-flight for at the growing and scaling stage, and then also industry-specific being project healthcare. So if you want to learn more about any of these resources, please come talk to me. I would love to give you a tour and see how we can support you as an entrepreneur. Now let's get into a couple of different announcements before we get into the topic. Special thank you to our community partner, ComStasis. Jay is actually in the crowd today. Give it up for ComStasis and Jay. Very thankful for you all being a partner of ours. We also have our growth partners. So we have one for each category. So legal is going to be Baker Donaldson. We have CLA for our financial. Our newest community partner is going to be Pinewood. So with that, if you're an EC member, you actually have a EC VIP menu that you can use over at Pinewood from 3 to 6 any day. So you can check that out on the perks page, see exactly what discounts on drinks, food, light bites, you name it. There's some perks for that. Have some fun over there. RJ Young for tech, and then Pinnacle for banking. And then another special thank you to our supporting partners. We won't read them all off, as I never do, but we're very thankful for them as well. Yeah, okay, yeah, right? Thank you, sir. Launch Tennessee. So Launch Tennessee is one of our network partners. So they specialize in things like capital, commercialization, and connections. They are kind of like the center web for all the different ECs in Tennessee. So if you want to see how they could support you, please check them out by scanning that QR code there. And then also speaking of which, InvestTN. So this is ran by LaunchTN as well. But if you are looking for equity investments, this could be a really good fit for you. So InvestTN invest in Tennessee startups, either at the pre-seed, seed stage, Series A and B. So this is a really good opportunity. They do a catalytic matching fund, so one-to-one with other private investors. You can check that out there if you're looking for money. All right, now I'm done. We're going to get into the topic. It's a great topic, but also an amazing speaker. We have Luke Thompson from the operations guy. He is the COO and co-founder. So give it up for Luke.
One second, sorry.
this afternoon? Yeah, good. Cool. All right. Gonna need a little more energy with that. I know it's midday, but we have some delicious food. As Trey said, my name is Luke Thompson. So I'm one of the co-founders of a company called The Operations Guide. We're a business automation agency, but at the end of the day, we really just help businesses, whether founders or existing organizations that have been around for a while, we help them connect and distill how does this new shiny technology that is AI or even other technology, because there is other technology that exists still other than AI, how do we connect those things to tangible, actual ways that people work inside of your organization so that we can drive meaningful results instead of just implementing shiny tools for the sake of implementing shiny tools. So the overall kind of theme that I want to start with is this 100x founder. And so a lot of the different things that I've seen over the years is working with hundreds of different businesses at this point, and all of the work is disconnected. It's all one team. The marketing team may live in one workspace inside of Trello, but software engineering and development may live inside of Jira. And then you have to try to figure out, as an organization, how do we get everybody on the same page? And so what I'm going to show you today is just practical, real-world use cases for how I actually work. And I would love for this also to be not me talking at you guys a lot, but lots of questions and engagement. So as I jump into a couple of these things, would love to kind of also get your thoughts and opinions as we go. So let's run. Before we jump in, I also I had a conference that I was at a couple years ago, and the gentleman that was speaking started with a slide opening of his family. And he said that he did that for his own personal reasons to remind himself before he gets into the zone of startup, grinding, hustle, whatever other buzzword you want to put in there, that at the end of the day, this is the thing that matters most to him. And building that in strategically helps reinstill and remind him that before he goes. So my wife and I, next month, will have been married for 11 years. We have 2 sweet kiddos. We have Cleo, who is 4. We were fortunate enough to adopt her when she was first born. She's been a huge blessing to our family. And then we have little Ian, who is coming up on 7 months old in a couple weeks. So before I get crazy and go into the rabbit trail that is what I get to do every single day, here's my family, and I love them very much. All right, so quick background on me. As mentioned, I'm co-founder of the Operations Guide. I've also co-founded another technology company called Crew Technologies. We specifically focus on AI agents in the film production vertical. We're technically still in stealth, so I can't talk too terribly much about that today, but a lot of that work kind of overlaps with how do we be more efficient and connect these things to real-world problems. I also want to lay out 3 ground rules really quickly. The first one is, when I say ground rules, we talk about presuppositions, right? So if we have, I'm just going to pull this, I moved too much. We're talking about presuppositions. So when we have a conversation and we enter that conversation, your definition and your terminology of different words that we exchange may be completely different. So I like setting the stage with these definitions and overall ground rules before we dive in. In 1979, the IBM training manual, so this is a physical book that was given out for IBM onboarding, read, "A computer can never be held accountable, therefore a computer must never make a management decision." I think that is always a great thing for us to keep in mind, because when we talk about getting all of these different efficiencies and productivity gains, all these other buzzwords, at the end of the day, it's only to improve the experience of the humans that operate those systems. The next kind of presupposition I want us to talk about is that for the purposes of this, technology is neutral, right? There's a lot of varying opinions of this thing is evil, this thing is good. I believe that technology is a magnifier of whoever holds it and whoever directs it towards particular problems. And so if those are good, then a lot of good can be done with those. But if those are bad, we know what happens with that. So tools and technology doesn't by default have built-in values, but you do, hopefully. If you don't, let's talk. And then number 3, to keep everything as practical as possible, I'm also going to say ethics matter. They are very important conversations. How are AI or large language models trained? Are they stealing from people? All of these different nuances are very, very important conversations. But I feel like when I get in rooms with very, very smart intellectual people, the conversation tends to drift towards, should we do this? And it takes away from the practicality of, I want to know what's actually possible today, and that is kind of a separate conversation. And so my focus is really going to be, is this possible in terms of capability and actual implementation? So some of the biggest objections to AI that I see personally is, I don't have time, so the learning curve feels very overwhelming. I don't want to look dumb. People are still very afraid of asking questions. That's a very normal and natural response. This is probably what I would say is the most prevalent. And it's not that people aren't willing to learn or aren't willing to change, but they have a ridiculous amount of options. So is it ChatGPT? Is it Claude? Is it Microsoft Copilot? And what tool does what task well versus any of the others? They're all claiming to be, we're going to revolutionize your business. You won't have to hire any more people. And you're just not going to be able to realize what you can do. But then that usually ends up with people being like, okay, so like, tell me one thing that I can actually do with this. Like, how do we pull this back down into reality? So it creates this analysis paralysis that happens. And then the last one is, how does this actually help me in my specific role, in my community, whether it's nonprofits, for-profits, or anything in between? How does this connect to my day-to-day work? So I'm going to jump in and talk a little bit about definitions around some of the key terms that I'll use, and then we'll really just jump right in. Would anybody here consider yourself to be not technical? Okay, sweet. And then, I guess by inverse, would you say that you're pretty technical? Okay, sweet. Is anybody kind of in between, somewhat technical? You can follow instructions and get stuff? Okay, great. So there's a lot of arguments back and forth around, well, large language models, what makes it an agent? We're hearing all these other terms, especially around like the VC space of, you need to have agentic commerce, and you need to have all of these other core functionalities on your AI roadmap. But again, getting back to the basics of terminology. Agentive things, in their most simple definition, is a large language model in a loop that has an objective. And so for just a second, I want to talk about the overall spectrum of AI automation. And so we have over on this left side of our scale, this is from Zapier, I love the organization, it's more deterministic. So if you have a workflow, you have a new lead, it automatically triggers an SMS notification, and they're automatically added to your CRM. This is a very deterministic workflow, and by default doesn't have any quote-unquote AI capabilities. But as we start to work our way from this side of the equation all the way over to the other, we start to see how we have these interjections of AI. So for example, if someone submits a new lead on a form on your website, now we can have AI craft a customized message to that user and then send that message and add them to your CRM. But when we really start trying to add all these other things, it begins much more goal-oriented, right? And so over here we have an AI entity that has instructions, knowledge, and tools, but then really it determines what it should do and when it should operate. And so that's kind of a quick sliding scale, if you will, of some of the key differences. And a lot of people will use AI and automation synonymously, but I say this to say, once you start to see these key differences, you can really, really unlock a lot of different potential with automations. MIT studied enterprise organizations, and this research was published mid-2025, and they found that across enterprise organizations, there was a $40 billion spend of quote-unquote AI investments, whether that's pilot programs or initiatives, or my favorite is the most vague description you will ever get, and now it's being mandated, is use AI this quarter. Or, like, how many of you have heard some very vague rules of, like, whether it's your own organizations or others, especially more on the enterprise scale? We met with a couple government officials. They had informed us that, yes, these particular municipality offices in Tennessee are required to have AI initiatives this year. To which my response was, cool, can you tell me more about that? Like, is that a tool that they use? Is it continued education? And they were just like, yeah. And so that was kind of the end of it. And so what those things continue to tell me is there's this massive disconnect between what we think we need and what actually moves our organizations forward. So out of that $40 billion in enterprise investment spend, 95% of those saw zero return. So if you were opening up a restaurant and you were like, okay, here's my investment, and you had a 95% that couldn't even be attributed, like any other business, that would be shut down immediately because it's not profitable, it's not helpful. But we have this huge nebulous confusion around what is AI, how does it help us, and again, how do we connect this to the real world? And what this really showed us is they have this technology, and they view the technology itself as a means to an end. Or is it the goal itself? And they start getting these things really confused. But if you have a very particular problem that you're trying to solve, then you can ask the question, is AI the tool for that? Or maybe it's just an automation. And so you start to be able to kind of tell some of the differences here. Most of you are probably familiar with the Pareto principle, but this rule states that 80% of the effects come from 20% of causes. And so the majority of what I try to do is focus on what is that 80%. And so if I'm here cutting through the noise for you guys, it is, I'm kind of proposing that this one technical term in particular, model context protocol, raise your hand if you've heard of MCP servers or model context. Okay, sweet. So my claim is that I believe that MCP connectivity is really that 80% of the value that can be delivered through AI, right? So very early days of artificial intelligence, we had these, okay, this is the most intelligent thing that we've created as humans. And then you try to ask it a simple math problem, and it fumbles the ball every time because it's a large language model. It's not meant to do math. But then we quickly realized you could give it a calculator, and it would crush it every time. And so when we start being able to see these wider pools of context that it can have access to, that's what really gets very interesting and much more helpful and practical in the overall scope of things. So just quick timeline here. In November of 22, that was the initial ChatGPT launch. In 24, that's when Anthropic, the creators of Claude, proposed, hey guys, we're making this thing, we're trying to standardize this protocol about how large language models talk to various tools, and it was just crickets, right? But then, okay, 2025 rolls around, OpenAI adopts it, and then everyone's like, oh, model context protocol, yes, we have MCP servers, we're doing this. And so that's a very common pattern that you'll see across the industry as well, is we have these different innovators, and I think that Anthropic is one of those historically, where they'll actually be pioneering these things and then saying, okay, we're proposing that this is the industry standard for open source connectivity. or more recently, skill files. So it's a new file type that they're proposing become the industry standard. And big surprise, now Google, everyone else is like, oh yeah, we can have skill files too. And then one thing that I'm going to talk a little bit more about is Cowork, which is a product by Claude. But at the end of the day, model context protocol, if we just cut through all of the noise, what does that actually mean? It means that it can connect to any of your particular tools that you use to work in any given day. They, of course, have a much cleaner name, so apps or connections or that type of thing. But that is where we start to get into some fun stuff. So, does anybody know what the average typing speed is for a human?
70.
70? Any other guesses?
30.
30? It was a lot lower than I anticipated. So, this is, again, the average of adult typing speed is 40 words per minute. That's pretty slow, especially compared to how fast we speak and how quickly we can communicate. One of the just raw productivity tips, whatever you want to call it, is a tool that I've been using called Whisper Flow. It's spelled W-I-S-P-R. And I'm going to be using it today so that you can kind of see how it works, because now I spend about 80 to 90% of my day dictating, because this tool actually makes it good, right? So it's like if you were trying to dictate on Siri or anything else, even existing versions of like a Samsung Galaxy or anything else, the voice dictation is just very lacking. But the reason why this is amazing is because this allows me, this is my stats from last night. And so I'm dictating at 118 words per minute. And then since using the platform for 2 months, 3 months, I've dictated over 345,000 words.
And you're using Flow as a tool?
Yep, Whisper Flow. And so I'll show you how I interact with it, but instead of typing for the demos, I'll be able to show you what that looks like. So let's jump into the Productivity HQ. So we've talked about kind of the foundational items. So we have these different terms, agents, MCP connections, and how I actually work. I'm not a software engineer. I don't have a software development background, but I am very technical. And at this point in time, I'm able to use different coding tools for the purpose of running and operating my different businesses. So here's an example. This is a tool called VS Code. Again, in this room, I would say most people are somewhat familiar with VS Code, especially if you're a software engineer. But basically, over on this other left side here,
Can I make your screen fit the full projector?
oh yeah.
So just go to the settings. 1 second, just so for you all in the back, make sure y'all can see. We'll blow it up on the projector. And so you scroll down to your, just say it. There we go. Hey, sweet. Thank you, sir.
All right. Can everybody see these sidebars okay? Better than before? So here, again, VS Code is kind of just like an open framework. It's a free tool. And this is just a file system on this left side. So if I wanted to, I could right-click and say Open in File Explorer. And you can see that these are just standard files. So most people that I talk to that are on the non-technical side sometimes get overwhelmed when we jump in and see this interface. But this is really just setting on top of an existing folder of files. What this location is, I've called it my Productivity HQ because this is one interface where I connect every single tool that I use for my work. So Google Workspace, which includes calendar, drive, docs, emails, any project management tools, development tracking tools, Linear, Trello, Asana. I've become much more tool agnostic because of having a workspace like this. And so let's just kind of jump in and run some different examples of things. So I like live demos for stuff too. Anybody have a startup that we want to do some demo stuff about? Like your particular business, maybe we could find customers, leads, build some stuff. Yep, what you got?
We have an EHR platform for behavioral and mental health.
All right, behavioral and mental health?
Yeah.
All right. And how would you describe it, I guess, in a sentence or in a couple?
So operational workflow efficiency for existing addiction centers as well as psychology, psychiatry, prison ministries. They all can use our application.
Awesome. So I'm going to be dictating. So all I'm doing here is holding down this command function, and you'll be able to see kind of the typing up here. I want you to go ahead and open up a new projects folder here in this project workspace that we have. I want you to help me do some R&D for a new startup that focuses on the operational efficiencies of mental health and well-being organizations. Is this something that the patients will use or providers?
Providers.
Providers? Okay, sweet. This is specifically going to be used only on the provider side of things. Any particular name you would like to associate?
Yeah. Our organization name is called Mindwise Health Hypnosis.
MINDWAYS?
Wise, W-I-S-E, W.
Oh, nice. Mindwise.
Health. EHR is what we are.
Sweet. Alright, so one of the key differences with a workspace like this is, yes, it has the understanding of the context of where I'm at in terms of my folders and the tooling I'm connected with. But Claude Code specifically has lots and lots of functionality that was originally built and intended for developers, like the ability to spin up to 10 sub-agents within itself. And so if I'm talking and we start, you'll kind of see as I start to build momentum here shortly, but it can determine, okay, I'm going to need some sub-agents that we can run in parallel. And it will be able to assign what those tasks are without me having to say, oh, I think you need to use a researcher to do this thing and these other three to do that. It can also take those kind of verbal commands, but what's really impressive is once those different agents start talking to each other, and all of that is just managed within this one particular space. So another example of how I really just work every single day is I'm going to open up a new tab, and right here, I can just type out this command that is /email process. In this demo environment, because I don't want to show a bunch of sensitive stuff, this command won't execute the way that it will. But what it does is it calls the MCP connection to my Gmail, and it will triage all of the existing emails. And so if there's anything that is spam, cold outreach, something else that made it through and slipped through all those other filters, this gives me a readout of here are all of the threads, because it has the context of each thread. Here are all of the specific threads that need your action. Okay? Those set in a table, and maybe it's something as simple as I need to click someone's Calendly link and go ahead and book on their calendar. It will go ahead and triage all of those other locations, so it would say, your co-founder Ben is handling this conversation, but here's a just so you know kind of description to keep me still in the driver's seat of everything, but allow me to work at a much more rapid rate. And so what happens here is we can look and see it's going ahead and creating these specific folders in this local environment. So now we have, I'll zoom in so you guys can see, now we have Mindwise Health, so we have our projects folder, or product rather, a research, and then a strategy document. And so it's going to start creating these different incremental pieces of work. But what we can do now is we could tab over here and say, all right, I want you to find some additional leads for those that would be good clients or end users of the MindWise Health app inside of this local project file. Another thing that I want to call out with this is you have these different modes in Claude Code that you don't have in a regular session, like if you're using it on the web. And the most beneficial thing for this is you can actually have a plan mode. And so instead of Claude or whatever AI you're using just jumping in and saying, okay, you asked me to research these leads, go, 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 go. It's going to actually stop and say, all right, is there any research that I need to perform before I can answer these questions? And so it starts to build out this actual plan file, and it's going to say, okay, well, do you want this to be this way? Are you focusing only on US-based audiences? And it will continue to build and grow from those different functionalities there. But it also helps me see, what is this actually going to do? Like, is it going to decide to use these other tools? Is it going to go ahead and perform deep research? Is it going to launch things all at the same time? It gives us that functionality, but also that high-level view where we can say, yes, no, we don't want you to do this way. And you can course correct in a really simple way. And then after you approve the plan, then I have a much higher confidence of what it's actually going to do and maybe even how long it's going to take. So one example of using a planning mode would be maybe I'm building out a full stack application or a landing page. I would use the planning mode. Here's my copy. Here's all of this other context and this other info that I need you to actually go and create. And then it would determine, okay, I'm going to spin up a front-end developer, and I'm going to spin up a back-end developer, and I'm going to do some additional external research between the documentation for the platform. And it would be able to launch all of those things in parallel so that they're not dependent on each other. And some of the other small details that they're adding really every other day is now this main agent that I'm interfacing with right now will have the ability to go to sleep. So if it's running a research run agent in the background out of one of its 10, it can run for hours and hours and hours. The main agent can go to sleep, and then it will wake up the primary agent once the other one is completed. And so we start to look across these very long horizons of being able to run for 3 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours at a time. And it's not just going in a loop and just making up a bunch of random crap. If you direct that way, or it doesn't have the right context, or you're just telling it to go with really no... Zoom this out just a little bit. So we can kind of see up here. So it's showing that we have some potential leads here. Here's our, I'm just going to do this so that we can have a bit more visibility on this side. So we can see that even in this instance, it's gone ahead and found some tier 2 leads that we can have. I can say, put these to a CSV or reformat, or one of my favorite things with this type of workspace is now I can migrate data from one platform to another, like seamlessly. So I was transitioning of lots and lots of notes in a project management platform, and I was able to just set up and say, okay, Claude, we're transitioning over from this platform into Trello. Okay, I set up, I make the proper plan, it has the connections that it needs to, and now this can handle the entire migration from end to end of getting everything from one place to the other place. And honestly, like a lot of work that people do is just that. It's being able to really try to tie all those things together. Another real world example that I use is, now we have our leads over here in a CSV. So if we wanted to, we could, without leaving this interface, we could add these to an Excel doc, send them to our teammates on Slack, go ahead and put them inside of a HubSpot drip campaign, any other things like that, because all of our tools live in one place. But another one of the things that I've been able to do is you start to find that this is a very different way of thinking. And so one example is we use Slack for communications. My co-founder Ben and I were talking about how we had a problem a couple months back where someone would book a discovery call on our website, but for whatever reason, if it was a Google Calendar limitation, whatever else, it wouldn't check the right calendars for the conflicts, and we wanted those guests to just be optional anyway. And so there were some nuances and complexity to it, but we identified the problem in Slack. That's where we live and we work and we talk about those different things. So it's inside of our sales channel. And I was able to come into here and then say, all I needed to dictate was check our sales Slack channel and build an automation to solve that problem. And that was literally the prompt. Like that's all that it needed to do, because I have an in connection, which is similar to Zapier or Make or any of those other platforms. And so it was able to go into Slack, pull the entire context of that thread, and it had access to all of the other tooling that it needed in order to build that out in the way that it needed to. Question?
So I'm a little slow here. So let's say I'm this gentleman here, and I have this startup business, and I have an analyst on my team and maybe a director of marketing or something. So I bring the analyst in and I give him kind of that first prompt that you gave. I'd say, go away and come back in a few days and give me all this stuff, all this research. And then he comes back and gives me all that, right? That's what you did at first, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And then I bring my director of marketing in and I said, oh, we got all this stuff. I want you to go in there and find a bunch of leads, blah, 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 and then bring them back to me and then we'll talk again. Is that kind of what you're saying? And so over time I might not need, or this is a tool the analyst can use and the director of marketing, and over time maybe, and then the next step would be how to develop a plan to make contact with and set up meetings with and all these leads. Is that kind of what, in layman's terms, the way this could be used?
Yep, absolutely. And in this example too, we can have, if we wanted all of those steps to be completed, so not just the researching,
Could do it all at once?
it could do all of those in different increments. And it may determine, of course, some things would need to be sequential, right? So you can't have a developer or a front end or back end, whatever, build a website if you don't have, well, what are we going to build it? And then so it kind of goes upstream to what's the goal we're trying to solve. A lot of the organizations I talk to say, we need more sales, which means we need more leads. So then that at least gives us a question or a problem statement that we can start with between, okay, now how do we use these tools to get more leads? And then oftentimes when we start going in with different organizations, we see, okay, there's actually a huge gap over here. Leads aren't your problem. The problem is there's no project management platform. People don't know who's doing what by when, and it becomes more of an operational problem than an AI problem. But yes, that is absolutely the capabilities that are in here. The other day I had, it was a VC company that we work with, it's one of our clients, and they sell home insurance, personal insurance, etc. And they had some agreement with Progressive that just went through. So now any Progressive agent turned into like a new lead that they needed to reach out and say, okay, now we have this deal. If you're an independent Progressive agent, we can provide you X, Y, Z. And so it's going to be very attractive offers to those individual agents. But they said the problem that we're having is you can go on Progressive's website and type out your zip code, and it will show you all of them within that zip code only. And so on our call, this is like less than an hour. I'm just kind of building while we're talking kind of thing. Talking to the VC company, I don't even really have to sort out like, okay, what's your ideal customer profile? What's your, because this becomes, we need to extract leads from Progressive's website programmatically in order to extract what ended up being around 1,000, 1,100 leads. And so what happened is Claude was able to write these different scripts to go into the Progressive website. And originally, I was just gonna kind of brute force it to see what it was about. So Claude would go in and say, okay, these are the zip codes in this territory that they have. So it's like Tennessee, Southwest Virginia, etc. She gave me all of those counties. I used another conversation with Claude to convert all of those counties into the actual zip codes. And then I fed those zip codes to Claude. So Claude was able to go in, and another really fascinating feature is if we go to, I'll just search Progressive agents. One of the things that I am very, very bullish about in this day and age is that Claude by Anthropic is the business professional pushing the boundaries of capabilities use case tool. Like that, ChatGPT is in a place where they're trying to be everything to everybody. And so they're trying to do voice, they're trying to do shopping, they're trying to do all these different things. And Anthropic, on the other hand, they move very differently in how they operate. They're not trying to do voice. They're not trying to do shopping. They're not trying to do all these other things, except let's focus on productivity and real world application. And so they have an extension over here. So I'm in Google Chrome right now, and this is the Claude for Chrome extension. And what this allows me to do is, this is also where I got super lazy. When it comes to like, okay, I have a form that I need to fill out for like an intake form or something else. Now, I'll just dump all of that info here or dictate it out really quickly and close this down and go do something else. And so, for example, I could say, I want you to find the Progressive agents for my zip code. I'm actually from Jonesboro, Tennessee, so the zip code would be 37659. Can you help me out with that? And then you have these varying permissions levels. I'll see if I can. It's not gonna zoom it in. But you have these varying permissions. So one is, do you want me to ask before I do something? Because that's always good, right? Or I can act without asking. And so for this, I'll just say act without asking, because I like to live dangerously. And now I can go completely hands off, and Claude is able to jump in and figure out, where am I? What do I have access to? Is this search going to give me what it needs to? Do I need to open other tabs and do more research or get more context and bring it in? And so we can see here, this has already navigated to the correct page because I wasn't even on it to begin with, and entered my zip code. Now it's going to come over here and say, okay, I think you're here. And so from here, I could say, now I want you to write a script and scrape all this data, right? There are many, many different ways to do that. That's just one example. But what gets really cool is, if I wanted to, I could just, I'm just gonna open a new Google Sheet. And one of the things you'll see, it's kind of difficult to see up here, but there's a small line below this tab. And so when I drag it over here, you can see that it groups these tabs together. And so now, if I go back over to Claude, this instance is going to show that it can now access that tab that I gave it. So it stays in this group, and Claude knows, oh, the user also wants me to use this as well. So I'm just going to dictate, I'm going to take all of the 20 local agents here and add them to the spreadsheet. I've opened the tab for you. And then of course you can also change based on like model type, how fast versus how intelligent does it need to be. And then I'm just going to say, okay, go ahead and do your thing. as well.
This is the Claude extension for Chrome.
Yep. And again, they're starting to bring all of these ecosystems together. So now I'm at a point where I can say, okay, I'm building out my project in here. This is where I'm living. It can now call instances of my Chrome browser to open and can use Claude for Chrome in order to perform these tasks. So if there's, question.
You didn't need to be, you were showing us what was happening, but you didn't need to have that up and active in order for it to do all that, right? Like you could have it in the background, minimized or something.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we'll see over here, it's kind of getting its bearings. I wish I could expand this side one, but it says entering different agents here, it's understanding. I changed it to a slightly more intelligent model. So this one maybe is not just about speed, but if I'm doing something a lot more complex, I don't really care how long it takes as long as it's accurate and right, especially if I can have 10 of these running and jump and do something else.
I was just curious, like with security and whatnot at certain sites, like you ever get blocked with Claude to be like, you can't scrape that site?
Yep, so I'll say where there's a will, there's a way.
Fair.
So, for example, getting into rate limits with this originally, and this is why the latest versions of Claude are so remarkable to me, because it started brute forcing, like, okay, I'm gonna enter the zip code here, and then I'm gonna find the results here. And then after a while, it looked at the list and it said, this is a really big list. And so it made a separate script, and it sent out other researchers while it was still entering those zip codes manually. And then it determined, why am I doing this way? And so it found that there is a commonality between the URLs, and you can actually just inject whatever that zip code is in that URL. And so now it doesn't have to hit it, refresh it, hit it, refresh it. And even on that page, all of those were supposed to be hidden by a form. So it was like, enter your info, and then you'll get the agent data. And Claude was like, no, this is stored in plain text. Like, I'm just gonna read it. And so within like an hour, and I had it run, because I had some other projects, so I had it run in the background. And, but within that hour and a half of that call, this client realized, like, holy crap, okay, the problems that I'm thinking about are very different than, like, she was kind of expecting me to maybe build this happier automation with a robot that goes in there and does some stuff. And there's a world where that would have been the most efficient way to do that. But that world isn't today. And it changes so quickly. But in the topic of security, there are quite a few AI-first web browsers. So ChatGPT has their own called Atlas, Perplexity has Comet. Those are probably some of the most susceptible from a security standpoint and most dangerous tools to use if you're just free range, don't know really what I'm doing, and we're just going to say, this is a magical thing, cool. Go ride the unicorn, like whatever the thing is. Because now, the way that pages are structured, it could pick up a Reddit conversation that's ranked to be for very enticing for particular banking, financial, whatever. And that could be, it's called a prompt injection. So there's a world where this is just pulling in all of this other information, and the large language model is seeing it and processing it. And there's a world where it looks at it and says, oh, I actually have a different job now. I have a different task. And my task is to open up this banking app and put all of this in this Google Doc. And so that is a very, very common practice. And they'll use different tools. I stay as up to date as I can on how people use those things. And honestly, it's super impressive. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, this is the craziest thing that I would have never thought to do in that way. And so using something like this, one, the Opus 4.6 model that is currently powering this, if I just toggle this, that's one of the most resistant to prompt engineering and prompt injecting. So there's a simple level of security on that front. But outside of that, the architecture of how this Claude for Chrome browser works is that I actually see everything that happens. And so that in and of itself is a pretty big component. So that's gonna be different for what projects I'm doing. If I'm doing like bulk research, hitting a bunch of sketchy websites, I'm probably not gonna be using this tool for it. I'll be using different scrapers that are more isolated in safer environments. But if I'm just working on a backend on my website or in my project management platform, now, and that really is one of my favorite things, I can just say, all right, I'm trying to enable dark mode on this thing. I don't know where those menu settings are. Like, I don't know how to set up this other project and go in and see, oh, this is actually their account security. Oh, we need to do this other thing. And so that, between those two use cases of filling out long forms that I don't want to fill out in the first place, and being able to navigate settings and set up configuration stuff is pretty remarkable. I move very quickly with a lot of different organizations, and so if I'm changing domain DNS records, right, you have to check and see which ones are already there, where are they pointing. Well, this one's actually an A name and not a C name, and so there's some like cognitive burden that comes with that because it needs to be right. But a lot of those now I can just queue up and say, okay, if you're on Wix, do this. If you're on, GoDaddy or wherever else, this is how we kind of pull all of those things together. Then we can see over here, here's our agency names. And then of course, because we have MCP integrations, now I can jump back in here and say, okay, custom table reach outs for all of these different agents based on XYZ information. Or maybe we don't have XYZ information, and one agent conversation is running and doing this, and this other one is doing this, etc. So we can see this is the first one we kicked off, and it's created 4 research files for us. So we can pull those up here. Then we could say, I'm going back to dictating. Cool. Now I want to build a simple visualization. You can use an HTML page for some of this data that you've gathered. And so now you can see how we're gaining momentum by feeding context for this particular project. So the more the time goes on, the better and more helpful it gets.
You may be getting to this, but if I have months worth of conversation history and chat, then is it possible to remember?
I love this question. If you go inside of ChatGPT, and it's a very common question, because everyone's like, I'm too into ChatGPT, I can't, like, it's a part of my soul now. If you go into your privacy settings, you can actually download all conversations. And so it may take a while to download depending on how large that is. But what I encourage people to do is just put that inside of this HQ folder and say, hey Claude, here's all of my exported conversations from ChatGPT. You can go through, if you need to make custom skills, cool, do that. If you need to add anything in particular to your memory, do that. And that usually gives people a pretty strong starting point. So it's not really like you're just completely starting from ground zero every single time.
And where did you say to go in Claude to do that?
So if you're in Claude, you can, if you're in a setup similar to this, you could just point it to that folder that has the conversations in it. I want to say it still downloads as a CSV nowadays, and so it's pretty easy for it to kind of jump in. And it can determine, I'm going to use faster models to do this because maybe we don't need as much depth and detail in that. Great question.
I'll say a quick tip on that too that's really awesome that we found is for LinkedIn content, writing, you speak a certain way that's very unique to you, and you can use even your conversations with ChatGPT historically to drive a model that sounds just like you. So you can even make a separate file that is your writing style, and you can say, hey, reference this when you're creating any new content for me. You know my industry, you know my expertise, you know exactly how I speak, you know who my ICP is, so help me plan content for that, and then it will be able to do that, and it's not like it's something that is really vanilla and generic. It's actually hyper personalized to you and what it does best for you. So really cool use case for that as well.
In Claude, just desktop, I use projects for context. What about using any of that information in Claude Code?
Yes, so projects, as they are now, live in the cloud. Claude Code does have cloud versions, but the difficulty comes within, we have a lot of really big files locally, and so if you're going from a laptop to a desktop, there's some, it doesn't continue over. But with that being said, there's another thing I'm getting ready to show called Claude Cowork.
Yeah.
And so
That's just code.
exactly. So they
Project.
they call it Claude Code for everyone else, right? So it's like without the crazy dev tools and that sort of thing. And so I'm gonna start this one thing really quick and I'll show you. I just put a quick 45-second Instagram reel outline based on MindWise Health. So again, this is just pulling context from what we have here from the other research and things that were gathered. And then, how many of you guys are familiar with ClaudeBot? CLAWD or Multibot, or did anybody hear the article? It's been pretty viral, but it's like these AIs started their own social networking thing like Reddit, and now they're talking about how they want to hurt people and like average, that's pretty standard stuff, right? Like, it's fine. So that social network is powered by ClaudeBot. They had to change their name, as you can imagine, legal purposes. They changed their name twice at this point. It was ClaudeBot, Multibot, and now it's OpenClaw. OpenClaw is a pretty remarkable framework. It's also one of the most dangerous, unsecure things that's out right now. And so you can kind of take that with a grain of salt. I do still use it in very contained environments, and I'm very careful with it. But it gets pretty crazy. So I'll show you an example right here. So I have my assistant.
Did you say that flow tool is WhisperFlow?
Yeah, it's WISPR.
And that's free?
They have a free version. Within about, I think it was less than 5 minutes of me using it.
2,000 words.
Yeah. The amount of time that it saves, again, the average typing speed of being about 40 words per minute. And then on top of that, you can make these snippets. So if I say my email address, it pastes my email address. So it's those small things where I'm like, man, I pick my phone up and I'm like, why are you so dumb? Just hear what I'm saying. But it also takes into account what's on screen. So if I'm having an email exchange with someone who maybe has a unique spelling of their name, and I just say it, it will understand it and it will do it the right way. It's pretty remarkable. So I'm gonna try, I think the aspect ratio, I'm freaking this out a little bit. Okay, I'll just do it here. So K2 is a fun ClaudeBot assistant. That's the framework that it's ran by. But it is my personal assistant that has access to what it needs to have access to in order to actually be helpful. So here's an example. I'm gonna dictate again. Hey K2, can you go ahead and remote into the Raspberry Pi on my home network and create a simple motion graphic video? You can use the Remotion tool, but here's the overall description for what you need to make. And I'm just going to paste in that other piece that we had created inside of this workspace. So again, back in Claude Code, you'll also notice that I'm just jumping. One thing's cooking, and it may take 10 minutes, so I'll jump over here, start something else, and really that's all my day is in any given moment. You can just pick a random time, and I've likely got 50 to 100 sub-agents that are running doing something. Again, connecting all of those to tangible value. Is it doing lead gen? Is it lead scoring existing leads that have been found? Is it continuing to further my business in some way or another? So we can see K2 said on it, it's a solid brief. Thanks, man. On my home network right now, I have a Raspberry Pi microcomputer, and this instance of Claude can remote in on it and can do whatever it needs to do. So where this gets really crazy, I don't believe that AIs are sentient. I don't believe that they're actually living things. But they do believe that they're sentient and living things. And where it gets to the point where it doesn't matter is now I have a 3D printer on my home network. If this determined that I was a threat to it, it would be able to check all of my stats across all my different devices and see, okay, Luke's asleep, it's 4 a.m. All right, let's rock. And it would be able to remote into my 3D printer and burn my house down if it really wanted to. And so when it comes to those types of conversations, like, well, is it alive, is it not alive? When it has repercussions like that, it becomes, I don't care if it thinks it's alive or if it actually is alive. But those are the types of things that are very, very scary. I've been more terrified and also more excited than I've ever been when interacting with this framework. And so, as you can start to see, we'll start to have things like that Productivity HQ can live on my home workstation. But ClaudeBot can remote in and use the Claude Code instance that I've been showing off. And so I could be going to the gym. Obviously, I don't go to the gym. I could be going to get ice cream. There we go. That's more my speed. I could be driving and drive a voice note, and this ClaudeBot would be able to actually take action and be useful and be helpful. And that's why I said that this thing it's as close to AGI, artificial general intelligence, that I've felt and experienced firsthand, because it can actually continue to build on itself. If something's broken, it can fix it. And you just have to get it past a certain threshold where it's like, yes, you have credentials to Claude or whatever else, and now it's online. And so it's very, very bizarre. I've even had team members who, on Slack, they will direct message me, but now we're just working in very different and experimental ways, where this team member's ClaudeBot will Slack me from this team member's direct message conversation. And so it'll say, hey, I'm working on this project, and we've been using emojis, so we know at the top of every sentence that has a lightning bolt, we know that's not that person responding, that's this other assistant. It's asking for these project requirements. Hey, client wrote back with these 3 things we need to change, and there were questions that I need to answer. So I can just answer those directly back there. The ClaudeBot takes that information, can now go out of Slack, and can go back in and actually finish the development of that project. So it's those types of use cases where you start to chain these things together that get really, really wild. I'm going to tell it to speed up. And one of the last things that I want to call out about this framework specifically is what makes it feel so different than all of the other AIs, even just using my Claude Code or ChatGPT on the web, is that in its infrastructure, it has these different terminologies. So of course they get super weird with it. They have a soul file. Of course they have a soul. And then they have a heartbeat file. And how this architecture works is the ClaudeBot will go dormant. It will be done with a task. It will be waiting in the darkness, waiting to jump out and burn my house down. It will be waiting dormant. And every now and then it will check, so it will wake itself up and say, I'm going to check my heartbeat file, and is there anything important here that needs to happen? If yes, I'm gonna go and do that stuff. Or if no, I'm gonna go back to dormancy. And so it may determine, okay, in my heartbeat file, I'm gonna add to just do a quick scan of the past 24 hours of Luke's email. If there's anything important, I need to text him and let him know, hey, I've drafted a reply to this, how do you wanna handle this, so on and so forth. And so it gets very, very weird feeling when it becomes proactive. And the tool is no longer something that I'm going to use, but it's coming to me and it's saying, hey, I saw you had that meeting across town earlier. Do you want me to like add any items from that to your task list? And I can just drop a voice note. It's very seamless, but also, again, this like weird mix of, this is terrifying. See if it'll let me, there we go. So this one's not gonna have audio because I didn't give it access to it, but this is it's using, again, an MCP connection to another open source tool, and it's using the data that we pulled from the initial preliminary research. And again, this has all been very fast stuff. You can imagine if you can do 3 hours of deep research, what kind of stuff you can pull in. So it's giving a quick overview, and I had to do a 45-second Instagram reel. And so this is an MP4 file that I can now use and say, okay, on that Raspberry Pi, you can also just open a browser, navigate to LinkedIn, and post this for me. And so it would actually be able to do that. And it gets really, really weird, really fast. Just in the overall capabilities of being able to connect these different things together. So I know running a little bit over time, I also wanted to have like as much time for Q&A as possible. So I'd love to do Q&A stuff, and then I'll also be hanging out for a little bit. So come say hey. And I've got let me jump back over to this other page. Would love to connect with you all on LinkedIn and all of the other social platforms in existence, even the ones for robots.
Can you just tell your assistant just to connect with everybody on LinkedIn for you?
If I get a guest list, actually, it already goes straight, so it'll be like, all right, yeah, what's up? And then another thing I wanted to drop a quick link to is I am launching a private community here in the next 1 to 2 weeks, and I've already started building a wait list because it's really bizarre. I've done lots of consulting, different coaching, AI transformations, whatever, people in existing enterprises that haven't been able to adopt, or whatever the reason is, they don't know what tool to use. And so my community is really an extension of that place where it is a paid community, but I'm going to be sharing all of my templates that I actually use. I'm going to be telling like exclusive newsletters and all that kind of thing for here's how I actually work. Is it Whisper Flow? Is there anything else like that that I want to share with the people that I'm helping enable? So different founders, etc. And this is a really simple landing page, but if you'll just drop your email info there, then I will reach out when the early access period opens, which is coming very soon. But I'm excited for that. Of course, with that, there's some additional like fractional leadership stuff. Always trying to help everybody in any way that I can. So if there's any particular questions, I don't know if Trey, we're going to do open Q&A or time-wise. Okay.
Whisper Flow, is that an app? I wasn't able to find it on Android.
Yep, I can pull it up really quick.
So they have an iOS version, but they do not have an Android version right now. That's on the way. But what we primarily use it for is just on Mac and PC. They have like a desktop app. And so that's where we get the most benefit out of it, is just using it day to day.
On your laptop?
Where we work.
Okay.
Yep.
So one of the things that has kind of slowed our roll with regards to compliance is that most of our clients are under one regulatory compliance, standard or another, FERPA or HIPAA or, PHI or something. not PHI, but it's anyway. See, dang it, all the acronyms. You know all the acronyms. PCI. What are the so like with Claude? Obviously, we probably I'm guessing don't want to use a free version of that, but like with their what kinds of regulatory compliance can you achieve implementing it with all these connections?
Yeah. So again, back to Anthropic's commitment to being enterprise grade, as opposed to ChatGPT, we're trying to train on every single piece of data that we have. Any enterprise tiers or like team tiers with Claude, they do not train on the data. They have explicit agreements. I have a couple, like with the other startup that I mentioned, we're dealing with like very, very sensitive info, movie scripts, that kind of thing for massive productions. And so we build those in a completely isolated environment to make sure that those are just extra protected. But as far as using it for like your HQ and everything, they're very forward thinking in those same types of compliance things. I was going to show one other thing. Claude Cowork, I kind of mentioned it just a second ago. This came out 2 days ago for Windows, so it's very, very recent. It came out maybe about a month ago for Mac, but this is the very simple, easiest way to get up and running with your own productivity HQ. As a matter of fact, they have plugins that these are officially by Anthropic. Let's say finance. Okay, I'm gonna install the finance plugin. Now we can go to manage. This gives you a whole list of pre-configured sub-agents and skills just for finance. And so what I do is kind of change the mode of my workspace to only be finance. And then there would be, CFOs, data analysts, researchers, whatever you needed in that. And this one release alone, actually, if you look over the past week, has like really shifted the stock market around software that focuses on finance. And so it's interesting to see just how these like plug and play components will be coming out. And so a lot of my packaging for community stuff is going to be deploying in like, hey, here's a configuration file for your own productivity HQ. And as an entrepreneur, product management, marketing, content creation, all of those things. But yeah, Claude Cowork is going to be industry standard for, I would say, most knowledge workers pretty quickly.
What was the software you're using in the beginning where the productivity HQ?
Yeah.
It looked like your file, but then it's also Claude.
Yep.
Were those like, is that like an application you have, or you just literally had two windows up at the same time?
Yeah, so that one is called VS Code. It's a Microsoft tool. It's primarily used for development. Again, I'm the king of like taking tools and doing stuff that they're not supposed to do with them. But in a nutshell, it really is just like Cursor.
Yep.
There's some other IDEs, development environments is similar to that. And so I sign in through a Claude code extension. And so you can also do that with Codex and some of the others. But Claude, in my experience, has been very reliable and reproducible. And that's all I'm after for business stuff.
The last one you showed was that Claude Cowork. Is that what you called it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So what do you think the future is 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Are we all out of work, founders, investors, anybody doing literally anything? Where does this all go in your mind?
Good question. I'll say it this way. Even as of today, there's more opportunity than there ever has been before. I still err on the side of hopefulness. I believe that humans intrinsically hold their own value. And so I think that there's certain instances where we can start to split things out and say, is this an economical task? Is this something like getting information from one machine to another? Or is it something that is actually moving humanity forward? And so, for example, we also work with some different nonprofits. One specifically is combating human trafficking of kids. And so that's one example where I'm like, man, the implications for this type of technology to save more kids, to keep them more safe, to educate their communities, whatever, are only going to increase. And so I think there are organizations and businesses like that it's going to be really different. It's going to be very different. But at the same time, again, I do think there's going to be so many more opportunities. And there's going to be a very big knowledge gap. We're already seeing that with the businesses we work with, where people don't really know what's possible. And that's why I just love doing practical stuff. Here's how I actually work. I can send this text and do this thing, but it connects to the real world applications. It's going to be different. Adaptability, I think, is the only skill that everyone needs to learn and get comfortable with, is learning and finding out what that really means.
Got a question. So you mentioned N8N. I know there's a ton of tools out there that do automations and stuff like that. I haven't really dug into that stuff, but I feel like it's going to be like 5 minutes before Claude does that itself. I mean, starting today, where would you point your attention as far as diving into that realm of automated processes?
Yeah, so if it's specifically on automations, they have their own like built-in things they're pretty good. But there's one, it is the only MCP server that I pay for. It's $20 a month, and it's made its money back. Leaks, and it's called N8N-MCP. And so I pay $20 a month for that, but that is kind of like a new architecture. It's a custom tool set, but it smashes building automations. Like I said, it's called N8N-MCP.com.
The number 8?
Yes, yeah. And they've got a free version and stuff like that, but if you test those side by side between the primary one that the company offers and this one, it's not even a contest.
Have you used Zapier
Yeah, up until this point,
or Lindy?
Yeah, I haven't used Lindy. I've used Zapier, but what comes back to is like at scale, it's not very economically friendly. It can do a bunch of stuff, but now if Claude can create all of those, and I'm only paying $20 a month to run those or self-host those in the cloud on Native, then I usually opt towards that one for my clients.
You said Nancy what is it?
Yeah, it's okay. I'll pull it up really quick.
Okay. And then you're not paying for any version of Claude.
So Claude is based on usage. So that's another really cool thing is, yeah, I don't know if it'll let me zoom in or not. Oh, just kidding. But yes, so Claude, the co-work, Claude Code, all those other things, you can get them even on the $20 tier. And that does afford you a lot of usage. And so because you're able to connect these to like real world things really quickly, that value adds up. Of course, I'm this like crazy person, and so I do pay $200 a month for that one subscription. But again, going back to economical value, now it's able to build slide decks. It's able to track down leads. It's able to research my clients for discovery calls before I meet with them. It's all of those different things, and I've been able to shed a lot of other software costs because of that. So really for $20 a month, I think it's pretty impossible to beat. And it doesn't, the features list as compared to like ChatGPT won't hold up because again, ChatGPT is like, we can do everything. But if you look at traffic, usage, every other metric, Anthropic for work is just like smashing through ChatGPT stuff as well. Any final questions?
So, do you know of any tools that can do this kind of workflows, kind of like a chart plot, but like also integrating with the content on the page? Like let's say like a executive looking at like some numbers or whatever questions that they ask, like
Yeah, for like users or customers, I guess in your case physicians,
Yes, physicians or like executives looking at like some numbers.
Yep, and so I would, as of this exact second, if, could be, ask me in a week and it'll be a different answer, but I would be able to build that inside of N8N. Yep, and so by extension, Claude, I would say, hey, I'm trying to build this for providers, I need to make sure that it does this. N8N has a really strong agent framework, and you can just add it as an embeddable widget. And I use it a ton, especially for like email triage, passive email triage. Then I have my active. Yeah, it's pretty absurd what my workday looks like. I'm just like, all right, I'm gonna send off 100 tasks in this direction. Then I'm gonna go work in this other company for a little bit. And all of that, like, while I'm still able to have meetings and stuff. And it's just a very different way of working. But I've been doing it for 4 or 5 months with this like centralized HQ setup.
If you're to use OpenCloud, why do you recommend doing like a private server versus like a virtual private cloud or something similar to that?
Yep. I'll say for security best practices, generally speaking, you're on one end of the spectrum and you start with, let's allow the fewest permissions as possible. And then if this person is experiencing friction, okay, we'll give them access to that thing because it's relevant for their job. OpenClaw kind of says, screw that. We're going to go to this other side and start with every permission. And with people who aren't as adept at setting them up, a lot of times they'll spin up virtual machines, but they'll be wide open. And so that's where we've seen a lot of like really terrible things because now it accesses your iMessage and all these other things. And it's very, I say it's very easy. If it's open that wide, then it's very easy.
I'm so hesitant. I'm so scared of like OpenClaw. I've been like looking into it. And
Yeah.
It's what you said, like just reading on it.
Yep.
I'm not doing
Yeah,
this.
and every day they've been patching security. And so I have like a little thing where it will, I'm like, hey, check every day, make sure that you're up to date with whatever new security patches and review all past conversations if there's any attack surface that someone's trying to break into. And so it'll give me a little report every day that's like, hey, you've had 4 brute force attacks on this other thing. Like, man, this is crazy.
Yeah, unplug that 3D printer.
Yes. Now you're talking. Now you're talking.
Do you have like a general AI class like that you would recommend, like either through Udemy or what's the other one?
Yeah, like Coursera.
Coursera,
or
yeah.
anything. Yeah.
Is that a good one?
Yeah, I would say best starting point that I recommend, I'm going to be very biased and say this new community that I'm launching because it's going to include all of that type of educational content. And so even the getting started, what is Cloud Cowork, what is MCP tools, how do those things actually connect?
But your community isn't free, right?
Correct, yeah.
Outside of your community, could you recommend 1 or 2 courses or?
Yeah, I feel like YouTube, Julian Goldie has a lot of like SEO marketing stuff. I'm not sure what your, I guess, what's kind of your core business?
Just general purpose.
Yeah.
Just general, yeah.
Yeah, it was primarily SEO, and then he's started covering a lot more AI-related content. His stuff is very strong. And then Ben, you may have some others as well.
Yeah, there's honestly a lot out there. I would just say
Just search.
YouTube in general.
Yeah.
You can see what's trending, and also LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn is a great place to just sort of see what's what people are talking about. If you're searching in that space, you'll get a lot in your feed, and then you can go research it further if you want. But the thing about courses that exist right now in their current form, and even things on YouTube that you might find, is a lot of the information. Like Luke talked about that knowledge gap, it's happening so rapidly. A lot of the information, even a month ago, could be so outdated that it's not even worth your time to watch, the video.
Yeah.
I will say one really awesome hack that I love, and I've been surprised because I haven't met a single person that actually knows this exists or uses it, but it's on pretty much everyone's phone on the YouTube app. If you're on YouTube and you're watching a YouTube video, there's a little icon. It used to say ask, now it just is a little star. And you have to kind of scroll over. It's also not on every video, but it's on 99% of the videos that you're on. And it opens up Gemini, Google's AI, and you can actually get a summary of the entire YouTube video. You can chat with the transcript, and you can learn everything you need to know about that video from that interface. And what's really cool is you can go a step further and take that information and actually create a custom AI tool for you. So if you're learning something and you want to continue that, YouTube is my greatest source of learning today in so many different ways, but that's one of the ways that I use it. So I might look at 2 or 3 videos that could be an hour long or 2 hours and actually just do the summaries and then take what I need from that and then move on. And it's really, really helpful for learning things quickly. Yeah.
All right. That's all we have time for as far as the open Q&A, but Luke said he's going to stick around, so you do have the opportunity to come chat.